What is the dumbest rule at your job? I'm not allowed to contact mall security or the police without district manager approval. I could have been just robbed at gunpoint in my store. My first call is supposed to be my DM to tell them I got robbed, and can I pretty please call the police? I'm a librarian. If somebody asks me where anything is, I have to redirect them to the front desk, no matter what. Example of how this is dumb. Where's the bathroom? I'm pretty sure the front desk can help you with that. Well, today I got sent home for wearing the new uniform I was just issued and told to change back into the old one. I guess they haven't officially started the new uniform yet. The thing is, I'm the only security guard at an empty building with no one at it to even see me. All I did was trade a grey shirt for a white one. All the markings are the same. Seems pointless to me. You have to take empty box training to know how to handle boxes that are, you know, empty. If 2 snacks fall from the vending machine, we have to turn in the extra one or it's considered stealing company property. Had a manager follow me to the front desk to turn in some cookies last week. I work for a very superstitious Korean man. The rules are no red pens, no shaking your legs, and no whistling after the sun goes down. These aren't official rules, but he gets very serious about these things and doesn't allow joking about ghosts or supernatural. We're not allowed to laugh out loud. My boss thinks we're secretly laughing at her. As soon as you're done with work and outside the building, just have a laughing circle in the parking lot. A long time ago I worked at a Navy shipyard. There were 2 rules: first aid kits at each work site. The OSHA type part of the organization had a rule that each work site had to have a first aid kit. The org that ran the workmen's comp stuff had a rule that first aid kits were prohibited at work sites. Any injury had to go to the industrial dispensary to establish a paper trail. Work site supervisors were screwed if they had a first aid kit. They were screwed if they didn't have one. The shipyard commander, a 4-striper, called the heads of each organization into his conference room. He told them, when you 2 come to an agreement about first aid kits, call my office. I will have the Marine at the door let you out. I'm tired of hearing about freaking first aid kits. We have to know where all the fire extinguishers are, but we're not supposed to put out the fire. If the microwave and printer run at the same time, it trips a breaker that only property management can reset. So whenever anyone microwaves something, they have to yell microwave so nobody prints. Gmail is blocked. Facebook and Twitter are not. I can wear any color jeans except blue. We are not allowed to refer to the Xerox machine as Bob Marley anymore, even though it still jams way more than it Xeroxes. This is because apparently the CEO had tween daughter come one day and she got very upset when she thought the staff were keeping her from seeing Bob Marley in real life. She did not know that Bob Marley is dead. This made the CEO got stressed out and yell at us about the nickname. No mini fridges on even floor numbers. That sounds absurd, but the kitchenettes are on floors 1 and 3. In our small hospital department, there's an oxygen line W, a giant on-off valve that only affects our small department. If there's a fire, I can't turn the valve to close it. I have to call the nursing supervisor, who is off-site, to come down to the fire and turn it off for me. I am not familiar enough with the rules of my job to choose the dumbest one, but at my old job, if a customer purchased something, then made it to the door with merchandise he or she didn't pay for, the cashier that rang them up was held accountable for it. We can expense Starbucks, but not food from Starbucks, because one guy was living off of Starbucks food for 3 months. Worst part was that he was an extremely well-paid engineer, but frugal as frick. There's always some guy who ruins it for everybody. Because of some new shoots we got working who don't understand the concept of not using a phone when there is work to be done, everyone has to put their cell phone in a bucket at 6 PM, or whenever the evening rush starts. Frick you, Kerrigan. We're not technically allowed to talk about our salaries with each other, even though the amount we each individually make is a matter of public record. That means that if you get a promotion, you have to either file a public records request to find out what your peers are making, and therefore pee off your new boss, or you have to violate the directive. It makes it pretty darn hard for an employee to negotiate. I'm entrusted with the care of mentally handicapped clients, including being trained in first aid, CPR, and the Heimlich maneuver, but apparently changing a light bulb or adjusting the thermostat in the group home where I work is too big a responsibility for me to be allowed to do. We are not to discuss politics on our personal social media account. This sounds illegal. My last manager, global company, tried to tell us that if she saw us at each other's desks discussing non-work related things, we had to keep track of those minutes and take them as vacation. She didn't last long. Women aren't allowed to lift anything, literally anything. I was going to dump a trash can full of shredded paper in the dumpster last week and my boss caught me, made me put the trash can down, and go find someone to dump it for me. I was literally lifting the thing with one hand. As my job requires a lot of lifting and I hate asking for help constantly, I have mastered the art of picking up 50+ lb boxes and running with them so no one catches me. Do not throw any personal items in company dumpsters or waste receptacles. All items to be discarded must be taken home. You cannot leave 250 miles of the area without getting your request to leave said area approved. And you have to take lots of online and in-person classes on how to be safe, not to beat your wife, not to drink and drive, and how to not be stressed out, and wear a reflective belt everywhere. I work construction. We're not allowed to tell the new guys how many newbies died in their first week. Young guys don't naturally think about safety. They think they'll live forever. Your gravity doesn't give a crap what you think. Stay away from the ledges and open elevator shafts. We weren't allowed to sit at my old job, even though our job didn't require us to walk or stand for any reason. We weren't allowed to sit because a worker in the past once pushed the chairs together and slept. At the daycare where I used to work, 1. Eat the same food as the kids during meal times to promote healthy habits and model good table manners. 2. Do not serve yourself until all of the children are served and have had as many servings as they'd like. 3. Do not eat when the children are not eating. 4. Do not eat unless the children are finished. 5. Mealtimes require staff to be actively serving the children and regulating behavior. They are not a staff lunch break. So basically we have to eat their food, but can't eat their food, but can't pack a lunch because we aren't allowed to eat different food but we can't eat the prepared food. And there was no fixed menu so we could fudge similar enough food from home to share. And we have to eat when they eat but we can't be eating while they're eating because we have to do our job and we can't take it in shifts because we have the minimum staff to child ratio in rooms at all times to avoid waste. 99% of us just ate whatever the frick we wanted during nap time if all the kids were asleep or the awake ones got soothed in shifts so we could eat. The other 1% didn't work over meals or just ate whatever. Supervisors aren't allowed to have any unnecessary contact with employees under them outside of work. This wouldn't be that idiotic if it weren't for the fact that the supervisors are just other teenagers that got conned into taking on a bunch more work for a 0.50 raise. You can finish your work on time. You can log in and log out on time. No one cares. The ones who get praise are people who work late, and why do they work late? Because they can't finish the work on time. But it's fine. Bob is working late and taking up so much load for company. No frick you. Bob is working late because he can't fix a single line error for 4 fricking days. Bob knows exactly where that line error is. My dad is a flight nurse. He has a flight suit that he carries anything he could possibly need while transporting a patient. One day he came home all peed off. I carry all kinds of needles and drugs that can paralyze someone, but they won't allow me to have my mooly tool on me because it has a knife blade over 3 inches long. We couldn't back into parking spaces at my old job. Our safety protocol states that if there is a fire and there are wheelchair-bound students or employees on the 2nd floor, we are to leave them at the top of the stairs for the firefighters and emergency personnel to help once they arrive. So, basically they get to burn to death. I work in a small programming company. We haven't set up any kind of version control yet. So to avoid overwriting other people's changes to packages and scripts, we have an item associated with each file. If you want to edit a file, you need to go to the person with that item and ask if they're done editing the file. If yes, you take the item so the next person has to ask you. Thing is, these items are just whatever we had in the office at the time. Chart package is associated with a foot-tall clay zombie gnome. Filter package is a pair of 3D glasses, which some people insist on wearing when editing that file. Those are the strangest too. We also have a few kinder egg toys and an empty bottle of Jack Daniels. I worked somewhere that had a separate code for different parts of the building. Quite a few got locked in the stairwell without knowing. Can't go anywhere unless we have another person to accompany us. Bathroom, store, etc. Look busy. I freaking hate looking busy. Snowballs are banned for everyone now because some customer, on a chairlift hit a skier in the balls with one. Not my current job, but at my old chain restaurant job we weren't allowed to give cups with bottles of soda. They had to purchase soft drink cups to have cups for their 2 liter and it was ridiculous. Here goes. So I work in a warehouse school that doubles as a program that employs mentally challenged people. It has a scared straight program for juvenile delinquents and we also take prisoners from a work release program. I am a support worker, which means I am a normal, adult worker whose job is to keep production afloat. For one, we can't have knives in a warehouse where 90% of the jobs we do require a knife. Too many kids, prisoners, mentally ill people stabbing each other. We can't change the station to oldies because the subject matter is too suggestive. We can only talk about 3 subjects: sports, news, and the weather. If someone hugs you, protocol is to stand still. Do not hug back. Do not push away and wait for a teacher to pull the kid off of you. Here's some things us support workers have done and weren't fired for. Doing H in the bathroom. Doing H in a car. Doing H in someone else's car and then doing the owner of the car in broad daylight when the special kids are around. Getting fingered by a married co-worker outside of the office window and moaning loud enough for everyone to hear. Pulling 2 no-call, no-shows every week for a year. Me. Showing up s-faced drunk. Sometimes me. Smoking a blunt in the front parking lot. Half the workers get stoned on lunch break and the supervisor is fine with it. The assistant supervisor joins in. Giving a kid a cigarette. Me. Telling a kid to step back a few feet cause I can smell the dong on your breath. Dating a high school kid. The list goes on. Bonus story. We had a 300+ LB woman who wrote down escort as her only past work experience on her application. She was hired, but left in the middle of her first day to see a John. Sister is a cheerleader for a professional sports team. They aren't allowed to talk to any of the players at all. If they have any interactions with them, they are fired immediately. Sucks cause I really want my sister to have Kevin Durant's babies. I think that's what they're trying to avoid. No hoodies. Jeans and tennis shoes are okay, but hoodies is where they draw the line. Just seems silly for an office with almost no dress code to be adamant about their employees not wearing hoodies even if it's raining. Except on Friday. Friday hoodies are okay. When I was in the military, you weren't allowed to put your hands in your pockets. What's an unsaid rule which pisses you off whenever it's broken? Standing in lines. I'm living in India and people don't follow the line rule. If there's a big line, some people will just be like, oh, there's a long line. That's too bad for those people, and then they'll just walk to the front. It's infuriating. Don't cut the goddamn line. There's no reason to unless it's an absolute emergency, and it usually isn't. Sometimes you would be risking a heart attack if you snort the whole thing. Roommates. I don't mind sharing my food with you, but do not use up all of something I bought and then not tell me, because when I go to make a sandwich and all my cheese is gone and I had no idea, I'm going to be really peed. Especially when I was thinking about the freaking amazing sandwich I was going to make when I got home and now I have to settle for toast. It's just not okay. And please don't open something that's unopened unless you ask first. If you're really stoned one night with hella munchies and my Cheetos are calling you, or my tub of Ben & Jerry's, eat it because I don't want you to suffer. Just make sure you replace it ASAP. More annoying to me is when they don't finish it but leave a uselessly small amount to get the I didn't use all of it defense. You mother sucker. If there is a half teaspoon of milk in the jug, just finish it. If you're using an electronic device that makes noise in public, wear headphones or mute the volume. Also, if you're inside of a small or quiet room and you need to make a call, make it brief and quiet or step outside into a hallway where you won't be disturbing other people. Touching my monitor screen to point to something. One time I needed to show my teacher something on my laptop to get his help with something, and he freaking took out his pencil and literally started to CIRLCE things on my screen. Like he wasn't just using his pencil to point at things, he actually freaking wrote on my screen. It seriously peed me off, and it took forever to get it all off. When someone is organizing a group event, for example to see a concert or football match, and you agree to go, however in the last minute you can't make it anymore, you are still expected to pay for that ticket or find someone else to replace you, not tell the organizer that it is their problem now. A guy had a friend who did that crap to me, freaking front row seats to a baseball game, flaked out at the last minute, and he never freaking paid. Don't be a jerk to the poor teenager working extra shifts at a crappy retail job to pay for university. People who talk in full voice on their cell phones during movies, concerts, plays or public events where their conversations ruin it for those around them. This goes for sitting in waiting rooms and playing games on their phone as well. It's always the old people who sit there with casino noise or trivia crack on full volume interrupting my reading. OMG. Please learn to turn your sound off. Don't make fun of me to impress a girl or other new friends. Happened to me too many times. If you are in the grocery store or retail store, treat your cart like you would a car and stay to the right, looking at you butthole Walmart shoppers who want to stop and hold up traffic for a chit chat. Don't eat the first or last of anything you didn't purchase, unless you're given specific permission by the person who did buy them. Let people out of the door, elevator, train, etc. before you try to squeeze in. We're not animals. I was at the hospital recently, and when we got down to the ground floor, there was like a semicircle surrounding the elevator of people waiting to get on, and some woman pushing what I assume was her mother, an old lady in a wheelchair, who then proceeded to look at us like we were buttholes when we didn't move out the elevator. B. You've got us surrounded. We can't get out. When you show someone a picture on your phone and they start swiping through your pictures. No, don't do that. I don't have anything I don't want you to see, but others might. But it's still none of your business. I didn't want to show you my whole gallery. Just one picture. I've stopped handing people my phone to show them pictures. That's why every second photo on my phone is of my balls. I'll jokingly say don't swipe, but they always do. And now it's too late. They've seen my balls. Every time I see them from that day, I'll grab my crotch and smile. Unless you live alone, do not set your alarm for 6 AM and then hit snooze every 9 minutes for the next hour or more. Snooze once, maybe twice. Anything more than that is rude. If I'm somewhere and a stranger and I bump into each other, no real fault of either of us. Sorry should be automatic on both sides. I apologize automatically in a lot of circumstances, but if the other party doesn't do the same, I immediately think they're rude and wish I could retract my apology. Better yet, excuse me, yeah excuse you, glares. I was stopped at the intersection before you, and that means I go first. Don't get peed when I took my turn at the right time. On a similar note, if you got to the intersection first, fricking go. I know you're trying to be polite by letting me go. Don't. You have the right of way. Take it. Don't have your massive stationary group conversations in the middle of the pavement. Don't walk incredibly slow, and if you do, stick to the side and don't meander. In groups, don't walk 5 abreast, 2-3 at most depending on size of path. Don't touch me, you creature. Even worse when you're blocking stairs. I don't want to have to press up against a railing to get around you, you creature. If someone calls you, and you put them on speakerphone, let them know. It's so infuriating to have a serious conversation with someone and then have them tell you midway through the phone call that you've been on speakerphone. It's not a big deal. I'm just sitting here with my best friend, so yes, it is a big deal. I called to talk to you, not them. I hate when someone dangerously overtakes me on the freeway just to take the same exit I was going to. Nice one, butthole. We're both stuck at the lights now, but at least you're a few feet ahead of me. I hate it when I get on the highway and the person in front of me doesn't bother to accelerate above 40 because they are just there to get right back off at the next exit. When you're in a movie theater, bus, airport, or any place else with tons of seats, and some butthole decides to sit right by you even though there's other open seats. People who leave the door ajar, whether it's my workspace or my bedroom, make sure that crap's shut tight so you can jack off when you want to. If the toilet paper roll is done, please change it. Hard concept for some to obey. Walk on the side of the hallway footpath that your country drives on. Snatching things out of my hands instead of asking if they could see have it. Just last week this girl who's dating my buddy just grabbed a lighter I had in my hand to light her cigarette. I snatched it back and told her she needs to use her words and to not just grab things from my hand. Ex-smoker here. I remember when I still smoke I was at this party and the craving was so strong that when I asked for a light to someone I just met there I just snatched it from his hands instead of waiting for him to hand it to me. I just then realized that was rude and apologized to him twice. If I can hear your show from across the house through the sound of the AC, the volume is too loud. Eating food off someone else's plate without asking. It is abominably rude behavior that most elementary school children would know is wrong. Joey doesn't share food. Arguing in front of children or in public. When a driver slowly rolls into the crosswalk at a red light. I have admittedly been guilty of this, but it's always because some big ass SUV is blocking the line of sight from my sedan. Generally they're already blocking the lane to begin with. Don't be a jerk to someone in the service industry. Don't yell at the waitress, cashier, or call center rep. The problem you're experiencing isn't their fault, so don't take your anger out on them. Don't make me a conversation piece in front of groups of people. Queuing. If there are multiple people waiting to get something, a queue must be formed. An unorderly rabble is not acceptable. Yes, I am English. Also, if there are multiple windows or service points, have a single queue so the person at the head of it can go to whatever one opens first, not a separate queue for each window. Chewing with your fricking mouth open. Jesus Christ. On a side note, asking somebody a question right as they're putting food into their mouth. When people invite themselves over to my place, I don't mind if you come over, but seriously don't just show up at my house or tell me that you're coming over. It's just not cool. This one really shows our dependence on communication devices. When I was young, very few of my friends had land phones, and cell phones weren't a thing. If you wanted to see someone, you did just that. You went to their place unannounced, and I think it was the norm since the dawn of civilization till the development of phone lines. My bubble of personal space. Unless you're Scandinavian, then it's more of your personal tank of space. Don't ever touch my monitor, even worse when you poke it so the LCD makes weird flashes and color stains. Don't set your crap on another person's car. Whenever someone takes out my headphones to talk to me, I always have people try to talk to me with both earbuds in. They still haven't learned that I can't hear anyone when both buds are in, and that they should motion for me to take them out before wasting their breath saying crap I can't hear. Stay to the right when you're on a set of stairs. Please clean up after you are done eating in a food court or any public place that serves food. Most people leave all their messes on the table, and this drives me freaking crazy. I don't know if it's an unsaid rule, but personal space. When standing in line, leave a little room between you and the person in front of you. If you stand mere inches behind me, I'm going to feel really uncomfortable. Sitting next to me on the bus when there are a million empty rows and we could both sit alone and in peace, especially if you have a cold or are a dirty mouth breather. Say thank you when someone holds the door open for you. It's not that hard to do and it's blatantly rude if you ignore the gesture. I open doors for people all the time and about 1/15 even notice. How to properly merge onto the highway. 1. Use the fricking accelerator. Speed the frick up. Merging should happen at the speed of traffic, not the same as the speed limit. By the time you are halfway to 2/3 up the on-ramp, you should be up to the speed of traffic or even 5 miles per hour over. 2. Look over your freaking shoulder to see the traffic coming behind you once you are halfway up the on-ramp. Your mirror is not freaking good enough. You have to turn around and freaking look. 3. Assess the speed of the cars on the highway that have the freaking right of way. Determine a spot you can merge and adjust accordingly. If you were using your accelerator properly, this is freaking easy as frick. Continue to look over your shoulder to assess the situation. 4. Merge like a freaking ninja. The idea is that you should merge in such a fashion that the vehicles traveling on the highway didn't have to do a freaking thing to accommodate you entering the highway. Yes, there are exceptions. 1. It's busy as frick. We all have to share the road. If it's unavoidable, let's be freaking nice and let people in when we can. 2. Semi-trucks and trailers. These vehicles are carrying all of the good crap we like to buy. They're also very polite if you're helpful to them. If you know the light signals, use them to help you out. I've driven across the country several times, and if you're good to the truck drivers, they spread the word and help you out. Give them room to merge, as that is a hard vehicle to maneuver quickly. 3. Your vehicle is terrible and you're in an emergency situation. If your vehicle isn't suitable to drive on the highway, then freaking don't drive on it. If it's an emergency, flash the frick out of your lights so we know. Hazards and brights. Some other tips. 1. Get off the freaking phone. Merging at high speeds is potentially freaking dangerous. Put the phone down long enough to merge. It doesn't take long and your BFF can wait. 2. Prepare to use the shoulder if you frick up. Seriously, if you don't execute a proper merge and try to merge into someone's side panels, you may find yourself in the shoulder of the highway. 3. Accelerate. Stomp down on the freaking gas pedal. I see so many people slam on their brakes when they could have just accelerated a tiny bit more. I wish I could upvote this more than once. There is nothing that causes me to rage as fast as people who try to merge at 45 in Texas, where people on the highway are going 75. Until your checked luggage actually appears on the belt, stand the frick back. My boss is a tuck your shirt in Nazi, among other things, so I found a loophole in the dress code where I don't have to tuck in my shirt. What things have you done by the book just to pee off your boss? My brother-in-law worked for UPS for 17 years. He was a bit of a joker and was constantly getting in trouble for coming to work with crazy hair colors or cornrows. He was a big Italian guy and was told it wasn't appropriate. It was always something, but they couldn't say anything about him wearing sunglasses. So his little rebellion was he would wear the most outrageous sunglasses he could think of. Ones shaped like giant red lips, guitars with the stems sticking up, purple ones with rhinestone hearts on them. Anything for a laugh. After a while, people knew him by his glasses. If someone said they lived in a certain area, I would say, "Oh, my brother-in-law is your UPS man, the guy with the crazy glasses," and their reply would almost always be something like, "Ooh, or John. Yeah, I love that guy. He's hilarious. He passed away 4 years ago. He was hit by a drunk driver while he was out walking one night. When we attended his funeral, all of the guys from work came dressed in their browns with crazy sunglasses on. His best friend gave his eulogy wearing a pair of neon green glasses 3 times the size of his face, and the pastor even borrowed John's guitar glasses when he went up to speak. After his funeral, we counted. He had over 200 different pairs. What started as him being a pain in the butt to his boss ended as a tribute to his character in life of always wanting to make someone else smile. A couple of friends of mine work at Walmart. They found out that kilts are well within the dress code as long as they are the correct color. Drove their managers nuts. It's been a year and absolutely no problems though. While I was in the Navy, it was recommended that I get a extensive surgery on my ankle. My command felt that I didn't deserve a bunch of time off for a surgery, so they said they would approve it but none of the convalescent leave. They refused to sign any paperwork. First thing I did was hit them with the regulation stating that they were required to respond to all requests within a certain amount of time. 3 days, I think. They responded with a no. So then I had Navy legal draw up paperwork with accordance to regulations, that my command would be responsible for 100% of my medical care if they did not abide by doctor's orders. I then let them know that would mean that all of my medical care would then be handled by civilians and the command would be responsible for paying the bill out of their budget. They approved my surgery, convalescent leave, and convalescent leave extension. I used to work for this small town, twice weekly newspaper. The editor, publisher, mayor, county commissioner and a few other people were skimming tax dollars. When I confronted my boss about it, he told me he'd blackball me if I said anything. So I went to the local television station, tipped them off and they uncovered the story. When they won their awards, my name was added to the list of reporters. I still can't get a job as a journalist, but dang if it didn't feel good. Small town politics. Also, wouldn't the blackball be limited to that county? No one outside should care about a small town mayor and cronies. Used to work at a TV station. Absolutely awful management and horrible bosses. Complained about it to friends all the time. Some would even ask me on Facebook about my job and I would reply, but I knew I could get fired for speaking ill of the company. So I read the HR handbook and found out as long as I don't specifically name the company, I can't be fired for it. So, about a month later, I realize I can't take this crap anymore and post on Facebook how terrible my job is, never mentioning the company by name. They fire me a day later. I gladly walk out of that building and into a lawyer's office, got $17,800 my yearly salary. Seriously. Feels good, man. Worked in one corporate kitchen where our GM didn't like our music, so he would put on children's music. So we all started singing along at the top of our lungs. We won that war of attrition. Years later in another kitchen we had surround sound in a closed kitchen where the uppity GM did not like our music and started passing draconian censorship rules about the music. So we switched it to children's music for a week. Moral of the story: never underestimate the power of a kitchen crew of misfits singing Banana Phone at the top of their lungs to fight fascism. Mother. Viva la Raffi. Viva la Raffi. Ring ring ring. Banana Phone. Not so much a tuck-in shirt Nazi situation, but here goes. My boss went away for about 3-4 weeks for a conference, and while he was away, a workmate and I had an idea. A George Foreman grill, and then we'd go to the deli and grab stuff for lunch. Hamburgers, lamb chops, pork, steaks, etc. We did this every day for over a month. And when the boss got back he put a stop to it, with the exact words, "I don't want that thing inside the office." So we took it to the shared kitchen area on our floor. We rented a suite. When he got angry at that, and said, "I don't want IT on this floor," we took it down to the underground parking area and used the power outlet at his parking space while he was out at lunch. He caught us because he was coming back from lunch with a business partner in the car with him, and we were hunched over a tiny George Foreman grill making hamburger patties. Imagine 3 IT guys crouching on the ground like cavemen in a poorly lit underground parking lot, cooking hamburger on the concrete floor. Yeah, it went over about as well as you would think. If he didn't specifically use the words "take that home or I will break it and throw it in the trash," our next step was to use the PowerPoint in the parking lot of the church directly opposite the building and facing his office. You should have found out where he lived, then pay the people across the street to let you run an extension cord out of their front door, hook it to the GF grill, and chill on the sidewalk while staring at his house. Back when I was working and attending classes, I would go straight from campus to work, getting me there anywhere from 10-20 minutes early before my shift. On occasion my boss would ask me to help him out with something before I clock on, putting something away or answering the phone. Over the span of a couple months, this evolved from occasionally to every day. Your shift starts when you get here. After doing this for a couple weeks, still clocking in at my usual 3 PM, I decide that if I'm working for a few extra minutes each day, I'm gonna get paid for it. I did this once, and I didn't make it an hour into my shift before my boss is screaming at me and throwing down the employee handbook saying that I'm only allowed to clock in 5 minutes before and after my scheduled shift. Needless to say, I made it a point to not check in until 5 minutes after my scheduled shift every day, no matter how early I was. Fast forward 3 months and my boss gets fired. He got what was coming to him. It is in fact illegal for your employer to fail to pay you for doing any sort of work for them under the Fair Labor Standards Act, whether it's part of your normally assigned duties or not. Not my story, but a co-worker worked at a water park. Supervisor was a bee who wouldn't let the leg guards at the top of the tallest slide in the park go to the bathroom. Guard at the top is radioing that he needs to take a crap, but she won't let him. Mind you, the lead guards are allowed to ride down every once in a while to make sure no tubes are stuck. Lead guard is about to crap his pants in front of a ton of guests, so he goes into the utility closet and shoots in a bucket of cat litter we kept to clean up vomit. He then proceeds to ride the slide down to clean himself off and left the supervisor to clean up his bucket of crap. My father was working in a post office in the early 80s. It was an unusually hot day with 85 degrees Fahrenheit inside. There were no fans available, so it was crazy. Men weren't allowed to wear shorts, but Dad came to work wearing shorts which covered his knees and a part of his shin. Figuring he was fine, he wasn't, and his boss sent him home to change. He returned in his grandfather's bourgeois from the late 19th century, top hat and all. The boss kept asking if it wasn't a little hot in that suit, but he said he was fine. That is a man I can respect. I just love opportunities to overdress. For example, I went to a job interview for a dishwasher in a full suit with a sweater vest and knit tie on. Not work but school. I'm a senior in high school, and one day a bunch of senior guys decided to start up Tank Top Tuesday. Every Tuesday about 1/2 the senior guys would come to school in a tank top. Our school had no rule about tank tops except that the straps be at least 2 inches thick, so we didn't anticipate any problem, especially considering girls at our school wore tank tops all the time. After the first day, the school announced that boys were no longer allowed to wear tank tops. When questioned as to why, they claimed that visible armpit hair was a distraction that inhibited learning. The following Tuesday, we all went to school wearing tank tops and sporting shaved armpits. TLDR. School claims guys can't wear tank tops because armpit hair is distracting. Next day, half the senior guys show up in tank tops with shaved armpits. Whoa, did your boss actually remember and recognize the exceptions to shirt tucking from the HR manual? An impressive power. Given how much he liked enforcing that rule, I wouldn't be surprised if he had nightmares about the day the workforce discovered the Hawaiian loophole. At a former workplace, the dress code was changed. Men were no longer allowed to wear shorts. Women could wear skirts. I started wearing a kilt because skirts were okay in the rule book. I would have just worn a regular skirt. Not work related, but school. In HS I wore a freecondoms.com t-shirt to school. I was called down to the principal's office after 3-4 hours. My cool teachers thought it was awesome in the AM classes, and was told I was promoting abhorrent behavior. I posited that I was in fact trying to prevent unwanted pregnancies. I lost my fight and was told I had to leave if I did not have another shirt. Rather than leaving, I put a sticky note over the M in condoms and spent the rest of the day harassing faculty about fantastic lakeside condos that I was giving away for free. When Circuit City was still in business, I worked in the warehouse. For whatever reason, they had a strict dress policy of khaki pants, this awful collar shirt that also had to be tucked in. This went for everyone, even warehouse. Like case in 420, I discovered through an old warehouse employee guide, shoved in a drawer years ago and forgotten about, that as long as warehouse employees had khaki colored shorts, with no cargo pockets, and a t-shirt with a Circuit City logo, there would be no problem. Circuit City stopped making Circuit City t-shirts long before I started, but thanks to a local Salvation Army, I was able to pick up 2 Circuit City t-shirts and a quick trip to Target for some shorts, and my new uniform was set. My managers were not happy about my appearance, claiming I looked sloppy and unkempt. Even better, when the giant black dude, who hated his job and just slept in the back and talked on his cell phone all day, from the warehouse found out about this. He too had some old Circuit City t-shirts and joined in. Management hated us working together. I miss Circuit City. Former C-City employee here too. We never did the khaki shorts thing, but we did used to wear old Fire Dog and other C-City related t-shirts to work constantly. The management didn't like it, but they couldn't stop it. I used to work at a lingerie store as an assistant manager, so I had to dress nice and look professional. All the other girls wore huge heels and always ended up complaining about how sore their feet were at the end of their shift, and I always wore flats to avoid having sore feet. They were still nice, stylish shoes, but they didn't have towering heels on them. My manager always used to get mad at me for not wearing heels and tried to claim it was part of the dress code. I looked it up and showed her that it didn't say anywhere that I had to wear heels, just that I had to wear acceptable work attire or something like that, and she tried to tell me it was an out-of-date dress code or something, so I would tell her that she should get an updated one then. Eventually, she brought head office into the argument and the provincial manager was trying to tell me to wear heels to work. I told them they would have to pay me more than minimum wage to ruin my feet. I did not get a raise and no one ever told me to wear heels to work again. Heels cause more problems than just foot pain. Serious sacral hip issues and lower back problems can arise from the unnatural tilt forced by the raised heels. Heels are silly. At my old school, they had rules about hair length, guys, and our teacher got anal about it. The only actual rules were that they couldn't pass our eyebrows or collar area. Being the whitey douchebag I am, I used a crap ton of gel to slick up my hair and do obnoxious things with it. It was all raised, so it never crossed my eyebrows or collar. I got away with it for 2 months, until the principal changed the rules. All just for me. D. You could have also just shaved your eyebrows. I used to work at the Jaws ride at Universal Studios Florida. Our uniform consisted of a blue t-shirt, jeans or jean shorts, white socks, and white shoes. The unofficial dress code had all of us girls wearing jean shorts and white knee socks. One summer, I ended up working the Jaws ride and the Jungle Cruise at Walt Disney World simultaneously. I love Disney and had always wanted to work there, but I ended up finding it stifling, with all sorts of silly and over-the-top rules. At the Jungle Cruise, you wear a khaki shirt, khaki shorts or pants, white socks, and brown shoes. One day, I didn't have any normal-sized socks to wear to the Jungle Cruise, so I ended up wearing my white knee-highs, which looked ridiculous with the jungle costume. When I got to work, one of my managers flipped his crap, told me my socks weren't in compliance with the Disney look, the official policies on how to dress at Disney, and made me roll my socks down. It looked like I was wearing little white life preservers around my ankles, and looked more out of place than they looked originally. I was annoyed, so when I went home, I scoured my Disney look booklet for the policies pertaining to socks. All I could find was that socks had to be long enough to cover the ankle bone. There was no maximum height. Heck, I could have worn white tights under my khaki shorts if I really wanted to. The next day, I wore my knee-highs again. As a small act of rebellion, the same manager was there, and he flipped out. He actually pulled me into the office to write me up, but before he could get me to sign the paperwork, I pulled out my copy of the Disney look and showed him that, while incredibly silly looking, my socks were perfectly acceptable, and that I would continue wearing them like that. And so I did. I looked stupid, but I didn't care. Working for Disney wasn't a pleasant experience in my opinion, and it was very liberating to know that I could at least wear my socks however the heck I wanted to. It sounds to me like adventuring through the jungle. Knee-high socks is a good idea. Working at Big 5, there was a policy that men had to be clean shaven or have a mustache. No beards or goatees or starburns. I cannot wear a mustache without looking like either a pedophile or an 80s P-star, but I hate shaving every day, so I grew out the biggest, creepiest Hulk Hogan stash ever witnessed and wore it proudly for the entire time I worked there. His name is Alex. I work in food service. My job created a rule one day that one's hair cannot touch one's collar. I have rather long hair, but I always kept it in a braid and we wear hats. Anyways, I was informed of this rule about 2 hours before the end of my shift, and told that I had to comply immediately because I was breaking health code. I politely informed them that no, I was not. This was a store policy, but I would be happy to come in with my hair up the next day. I didn't think this was unreasonable. It takes a while, not to mention pins, hair product etc. to keep my hair up. Not good enough. Now. So I punched out for a break, bought rubber bands and floral wire, Made 8 braids with the wire woven in and stuck them in every direction. Boss saw me and began screaming. I calmly told him my hair wasn't touching my collar. TL. DR. Long hair not allowed to touch collar. Created obnoxious hairdo within regulations. Boss told me you have to cover X this upcoming weekend. Both days. Since everybody else said number, I said how do you know I'll say yes. He said you have to. There's nobody left. I said you're wrong. I'm left. But I quit. Now there's nobody left. He was speechless. His expression was priceless. I stood there about 10 seconds and said, I'm walking away now, and left. Thank God this happened the day after I had secretly secured a better job. Probably one of my fondest memories. Not a job, but a school. I went to a Catholic college and they didn't allow members of the opposite sex to spend the night in a dorm room. I made a huge case that they were discriminating against heterosexuals, and that rule miraculously disappeared the next year. Praise Jesus and pass the lube. When I was in the army, I pulled my car up to an ATM machine on base to get cash. 4 guys piled out, leaving all doors open. While getting my cash, from somewhere behind me someone says, you actually drive that freaking piece of crap? I should call in for a tow truck. Without bothering to turn around, I yelled back, frick you and your tow truck. I never did see who it was as he was gone by the time I had my money. Next day my squad leader calls me aside and asks me if I told SSGP to go frick himself yesterday. And I had to admit that yes, I probably had. So I was in trouble. I had 3 other witnesses who were interviewed and signed sworn statements to the fact that I had told a staff sergeant to go frick himself and a tow truck. I was given the opportunity to read the incriminating statements before I made my own, just to point out that there was no point in lying. That was when I found out that only one guy had even known who it was, because he was in civilian clothes, not on duty. So my statement detailed an aggressively profane and hostile person in civilian attire, identity unknown to me, whom I found to be acting irrationally, and attempted to diffuse further confrontation by responding jovially in kind fashion. The beauty was, without reading the other statements, I'd have been unable to mesh my version of events so perfectly with the bland facts the others reported. The key point is, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there is no such thing as disrespecting a non-commissioned officer, only insubordination, which is very clear about being in uniform. At this point everyone decided the best thing to do was to sweep it under the rug, as SSGP had far more to lose than I did, and magically everything went away. P continued to be a dong to me at every opportunity, so I made it a point of yelling hey P frick you whenever I saw him out of uniform. Eventually my squad leader asked me to stop as a personal favor to him, so I did, but it was fun for a while. There's actually a lot more to the story, and I'm dying to tell it but didn't have time, and don't yet. I'm going to post the rest tomorrow about the rise and fall of SSGP, and the part I played. On the flip side, I'm the boss enforcing policy. When I took over the department, the old boss told me that the reason the place looked like crap was because when he asked a sales associate, base pay and commission, to clean or put up stock, they claimed it wasn't in their job description. The main boss backed them up, calling it a technicality. I pulled out the description and read out other duties as assigned by the manager on the last line. 2 out of 9 quit. My department is now clean and stock is always up. Sales are consistently up. I'm cool with that. I've never understood not doing reasonable things at your job. Cleaning, making it presentable and comfortable for patrons, stocking, is all part of sales. I worked at a PetSmart 5 or so years ago, in the pet hotel where animals were boarded while their pet parents, owners, went on vacation. Everything I did was in the back. No customers ever saw me, just the dogs and kitties. But my B-boss would always get onto me for forgetting my belt. So one day she was particularly mad at me about not having a belt, despite the fact that I was picking that shit up last minute for someone who was sick. I pick up a dog leash, put it through my belt loops, and say, well, it appears I now have a belt. Well, I wouldn't be taking any crap from the female dogs in my care. Similar to OP, but with a military swag to it. In the Navy you must always have a white t-shirt under your uniform. I had a senior chief who constantly checked if your t-shirt was not visible and required that it be seen. I checked the uniform regs and found that while in a working uniform you can wear a v-neck tee. Started wearing them and he took notice as soon as he saw me. I told him that the regs allowed it. He scowled and his only comment was, "One for the blue shirts," and walked away. Then he hammered me for every reg violation he could find. Smartasses never win. At least not in today's Navy. Company dress code allows women to wear open-toed shoes, so long as they are leather. The dress code does not allow men to do the same. A few years back, I started wearing leather sandals during the warmer months. A few managers mentioned to me that I was in violation of the dress code and I pointed out that my shoes would be considered acceptable if I were a woman and that it's gender discrimination to deny me the ability to wear something that is considered okay on someone of the other gender. Haven't heard any comments or problems since. This gender discrimination keeps coming up in this post, and it's absolutely true where I work too. Our dress code is pretty simple. Collared shirt. Women never wear a collared shirt. Ever. Men have to, or they'll be sent home. Wish I were freaking kidding. When I was working at an office max about 10 years ago, I was the only employee who didn't smoke. Needless to say, everyone in the building took a 15-minute smoke break 2-3 times a shift, and I got squat. One day, I asked the manager if I could have a clean air break, and he was confused. I explained that since smokers can have their 15 minutes breaks 2-3 times a shift, I should be able to step outside and do the same without having to smoke. Irked my manager, but he knew he had to let me to avoid any discrimination. I know an ex-smoker who had to quit due to a rather tough fight with lung cancer, which he won. He would still go outside and take non-smoking breaks every 30 minutes or so. He was so used to going out for a smoke, he really couldn't sit for an hour without getting antsy. I admired him for taking the one good thing about smoking, a break, and applying it to his no longer smoking self. Not really my boss but my school principal, which was really like a boss to me as a kid. I was at an Opus Dei school so the nuns were pretty freaking strict and I hated the freaking salads they gave us. I found multiple ways to hide the food because you can't throw food when there are millions of people starving until one day I just went with a tray half full to dump it all. The nun went ballistic and I just said I'm full. Gluttony is a sin and threw it all. That got me in trouble. I was 9. Clarify, I have posted this story before in some similar thread. This isn't work related but happened at my old high school. I had a friend who was a year older than me, and he decided to do an experiment. He wanted to see how short shorts could be. He made his own jorts and every few days he would cut an inch or so off. It got to the point where he had to wear a Speedo underneath otherwise people would have been able to see his balls. The only reason he stopped was because he was reported by a killjoy and told him to stop. Best experience ever. But the experiment was a success. He was testing to see if the dress code was sexist towards girls and he proved it. When I was in grade 4, pizza was sold at lunch for $1.50 a slice. I saw a business opportunity and went to the Little Caesars a stone's throw away from the school and bought 10 hot and ready $5 pizzas and sold the slices for $1, $1.25 on Friday. When the school told me I couldn't sell pizza on school property, I moved my office to my aunt's house which was next door. So every day at lunch the kids would walk to the neighbor's front yard, buy pizza and come back to school. I was making a tidy sum every day. I went to a Pentecostal school even though I, nor my family were Pentecostal. They made me get haircuts all the time and I liked having long hair and sideburns. One day they gave me the ultimatum. I had to shave my sideburns, or they would do it. I then told the principal that I wanted a tattoo. I was told that I could not, because the school's rules were biblically based, and then she read Leviticus 19:28. Do not cut your bodies for the dead or put tattoo marks on yourselves. I am the Lord. I told her to please read the verse above, which read, do not cut the hair at the sides of your head or clip off the edges of your beard. I got to keep my sideburns. What is one rule that was implemented at your school or work that backfired horribly? My senior year of high school we got moved into a new school building across from a grocery store. The builders put walls up over the plumbing for water fountains by accident, so there was a huge increase in reusable water bottles, and the school put up a vending machine entirely full of water. Now I suppose it's time to mention that this was in Washington state, where you can sell liquor in grocery stores along with anything else. So some freshmen got the bright idea to start stealing vodka from the store across the street, fill disposable water bottles with it, and sell it to other students. This caused a huge problem with the large population of drunk underclassmen wandering the halls of the school and getting into trouble. Finally, the staff got together for a meeting about what to do. Someone suggested banning water bottles. So now students had no access to water during school hours, and everyone was enraged. There were articles written about it and parents complaining. People all over town were talking about how we had a ban on water. They eventually lifted the ban, and the vodka problem resumed. TLDR, my school had kids selling booze in water bottles and banned water. This was just one kid, but it was hilarious. In the late 90s, humorous graphic tees became a popular thing, and the mall had a few stores that sold questionable taste shirts. Shoots that said P*, orgasm, donut, a headless guy holding a sign that says will work for head. That type of thing. The school made a rule that if your shirt was inappropriate, you would have to turn it inside out. A kid in my class shows up to school with a shirt that says I'd rather be masturbating. The teacher sends him to the bathroom to turn it inside out. He returns with an inside out shirt that says I put the FU in fun. The teacher doesn't realize it's the same shirt, so he takes it off in class and shows her both sides. He had a few shirts custom made with prints on both sides. She asks him if he has another shirt in his locker and he says I have my gym clothes. She told him to go get the other shirt and change. He walks back into the class with a shirt that says you're driving me knucking futs. The teacher said just go to the office. So he goes to the office and tells them that he was sent there because of his shirt. So they say turn it inside out and go back to class. So he turns his shirt inside out and walks back into the class with a shirt that says free mustache rides. She said did you go to the office, and he said they told me to flip it inside out and come back to class. The teacher sighed and said just sit down. She went about teaching and we thought he won, but he ended up getting suspended for 3 days. When he returned from suspension, he wore shirts for probably a whole week that said, I love teachers, support your local teachers union, cops are the good guys, drugs are bad, wash behind your ears, etc. It was funny because he made these overtly positive shirts and the teachers and students would try to read into it too much to see what they really meant, as if it was just a tongue-in-cheek thing that they didn't get. Eventually one of his positive shirts that he found said support single moms, but he claims he didn't realize that there was a silhouette of a stripper on a pole. He says he thought it was just a woman, so he got suspended again. As a side note, the same kid bought a blow-up doll and took her to every football game, basketball game, pep rally, etc. and gradually worked her into official school functions and brought her to school several times. For whatever reason, the teachers just gave up on that one. We passed her around over our heads at graduation. He even bought her a cap and gown. LOL at the blow-up doll. My middle school had a no touching rule, which meant you'd get suspended for high-fiving a friend. Girls got in trouble for hugging their friends. Our teachers thought this was ridiculous and would have students high-five each other in their classes for a minute every day. So many kids got suspensions that the rule stopped being enforced and only counted if you touched a kid in a bullying situation or sexual harassment. Not sure if it was exactly a rule, but my middle school once encouraged kids to not touch each other at all to reduce physical harassment cases, even friendly gestures among friends. All that did was get the kids running around touching each other around campus for about a month and a half, screaming physical harassment as they did so. To add insult to injury, they did it twice as often in front of the admin who made the presentation about it. In my dorm, if you did something that triggered the smoke fire alarm, you had to do a safety presentation for everyone on your floor. This was intended to deter pranksters from pulling the alarm. A guy on our floor was making grilled cheese in the kitchenette and burned it, which legitimately triggered the fire alarm. Afterwards, he explained, assuming that since it had been a legitimate alarm and not a prank, that he wouldn't have to do a presentation. He was, of course, wrong. So, the next Wednesday night, The entire floor assembled, and we were treated to a 30-minute safety presentation on the dangers of grilled cheese sandwiches. It contained literally nothing about fire safety. It was all choking hazards and cholesterol. Our RA was furious, but the student pointed out that the write-up that he'd been given just said safety presentation. We didn't get any more presentations after that. What kind of power-crazed RA does that? My high school made students wear these neon t-shirts that read dress code violator if their outfit didn't adhere to the school's policy. They became so popular the school began selling them 1 week later. We got a new manager for our office. She was an outside hire and was trying to prove herself quickly, and she was obsessed with efficiency. So, her first week here she sent out this very rudely worded email about employees eating at our desks. We have a very small break area for tables and we have about 300 employees here, and that we all had to stop eating at our desks because it was not efficient to eat and try to work at the same time. Through a coordinated effort by some of the more sassy people at the office, they all had their lunches at the same time and filled the break room with about 90 people, elbow to elbow, and they all ate standing up. Literally, the next day after that happened, she sent out a follow-up email saying that we could eat at our desks, but she advised us to take a break from our work from time to time. It was pretty funny. Eating while working seems like the most efficient thing, whereas a break you completely stop. School I attended emailed the entire student body to not use Yik Yak because students were being bullied on it. All of the students, myself included, who hadn't heard of the app immediately downloaded it and began using it. I miss Yik Yak. New manager got rid of the sofa in the break room so people couldn't nap on their hour-long lunch break. No one overslept or took the pee, but it was good to have the option on a tough day. Stoner guy started sleeping in other places, including in between walls and in the warehouse. That's when we started losing him and couldn't find him, as he'd go into a deeper sleep and was less likely to be disturbed. He didn't lose his job somehow. That place had a hard time hiring. That's because they got rid of the sofa. If you return a library book late, your parents would have to return it and explain why it's late. It worked about as well as you would think. The rule lasted a few months before they figured it wasn't worth the cost of replacing all the books. My 4 years of high school were full of my school trying out new policies and procedures to use in the future. My sophomore year, my school decided to make tests count for 100% of the grade, and homework count for 0%, but it was still assigned. And as you'd expect, kids did absolutely no homework. The ones that didn't retain information well, or were bad test takers, struggled pretty hard to make the grade without homework padding it. Our failure rate was pretty high that year. Then my junior year, they brought homework grades back and made a new rule that there were no due dates, nor penalties for turning in late work for your 6 weeks. We didn't do quarters. As long as it was before the next 6 weeks started, you were good. This led to students doing no homework until the last few days of the 6 weeks, and teachers had to accept and grade them all before grades were due. This put teachers under immense stress by causing them to work insane hours and spend every hour at home grading, which made them very irritable and more likely to just shove pointless activities and busy work at us until they could finish grading. This was actually in the news a couple of months ago. We had a really hot summer last year, and the boys at my little brother's secondary school were mad that they couldn't wear shorts but the girls could wear skirts. The junior leadership team brought it up at a meeting, and the head teacher jokingly went, "Alright, if the boys want to wear skirts, then let them." A group of boys went to school wearing skirts the next day. Then it wasn't just a group of them. And that, children, is how Scotland was born. A school in my area jacked up the cost of the parking pass. People protested by not buying the pass. Instead they rode the bus. Funny thing is, the county really relies on juniors and seniors driving because they don't have enough buses for all the students. The parking pass fee dropped. People drove again. Don't ever let them tell you driving to school is a privilege. They need you to drive to school. Now that's a lesson in economics. At a former job, software development, there was a foosball table. People would play reasonably often, but just one game to take a break. One day, management came down to the software engineering floor and saw people playing foosball in the middle of the afternoon. They declared no football until 4:30 p.m. That ended up making it so that everybody knew when there would be other people wanting to play football, so it was much easier to find somebody willing to play and significantly increase the amount of football played at work. My ping pong partner started working remote. High school took all the stall doors off the boys' bathrooms because of graffiti or something, so I started pooping in the bathroom near the office. After a couple of times of the superintendent coming in while I was doing that, all the doors were put back on. Maintain eye contact and nod as the superintendent walks by. I worked for a place that did RMA repairs on PCs. Most of our clients were businesses like hospitals and factories. Anyway, as I was touring the workshop during my orientation, the guy taking me around took me to the QA department. Once all builds or repairs are made, they're sent to the QA department for a final inspection before going out to the customer. The guy jokingly said we used to pay the QA guys bonuses for every mistake they found on a build. I started laughing. The only problem was it wasn't a joke. They actually paid bonuses to the QA people who found mistakes on builds. For anyone not familiar with the internal workings of a PC, it could take less than 3 seconds to completely render a computer inoperable. Heck, you could loosen a connection just by inspecting it. Luckily that policy ended before I was hired. I mean, can you imagine giving someone a bonus for finding screw ups when it would take almost no effort to make a screw up and then claim you found it? You now need 40 hours of community service to graduate. It's recommended that all freshmen do 10 hours a year, while the seniors start as soon as possible to get the 40 hours out of the way. The rule was gone the day before graduation because they would have had less than a 10% graduation rate that year, and it would have made the school look terrible. They did this to try to increase their reputation of being a good school. All the other schools in the area are trash though, so I really don't know why. My school implemented the 40 volunteer hour rule when I was in high school, too, except the way they did it was that the incoming seniors, my class, had to do 10, the class below us 20, next class 30, and the incoming freshmen would have to complete 40 by graduation. That way, they avoided that situation you described, and as far as I know, the 40-hour rule is still in place. I'm a programmer. On a previous job, the developers and teams were measured by the number of feature requests they completed. We figured out to subdivide everything to blow it up into the maximum number of feature requests possible. A manager might request a new report. We'd set up separate feature tickets for create button, make button blue, make button respond when clicked, implement business logic, display results in grid, allow sorting of grid, and so on. We'd subdivide a one-day task into 21-hour tasks. Management loved it. Our team looked 20 times as productive, despite deliberately slowing ourselves down with red tape. Ugh, so accurate it hurts. Especially the management loved it part. My high school told my senior class, no senior pranks or none of you walk HA. Result, we didn't throw a prank. Instead, we threw biggest rager of the year on school property with the permission of the county sheriff as long as we took our bottles with us when we finished. The sheriff retired the next week. He was the real one. Aftermath. The administration was p as heck but couldn't pin it on the senior class because Sheriff Rick couldn't remember what kids were there. My old job had a draconian attendance policy in which if you were at a second late, you got a 1-stroke 2-point demerit. If you were an hour late, you got that same 1-stroke 2-point demerit. Demerits accrued. 3 equals verbal warning. 4 equals written. Either 5 or 6 was termination. In addition to making for some anxiety-filled employees that made dumb decisions to speed through snowstorms, it also meant if you got stuck in a traffic jam, you might as well just take your time, stop for gas, get breakfast, etc. Same place also had a similar policy that assured the plague spread through the whole place. Say you came to work at 7. By 9 AM you've got a fever and full-blown flu symptoms. If you clock out then, you get a whole point demerit. But if you sit there coughing and shivering and infecting your co-workers for another 2 hours, till your shift was half over, you only got a half-point demerit. The sickness policy is shockingly dumb. If everyone gets sick because one person couldn't leave, then productivity goes down a huge amount, if not shutting down operations entirely until enough people are healthy again. I'm surprised that wasn't revoked after the first time, but some managers can't manage anything. My senior year of high school, some guy in my class got an in-school suspension for wearing a headband. He had long, curly hair, so the next couple weeks almost every guy on the football team started wearing headbands in protest. Keep in mind that girls could wear headbands, just not guys. No one really understood this rule. My junior high school adopted a policy to not allow kids to loiter in groups of 5 or more, in attempts to crack down on gang mentality. This was freaking junior high. Anyway, me and my group of misfits, 6 of us, were always hanging out during free times, and the principal eventually stopped us and asked us to separate. I had to casually explain to him that we not a group of 6, but 2 groups of 3 that were intermingling. People caught wind and that rule was basically dead. That was one of the few times I had to explain to my father why he was called into the principal's office with me. I'm to bring you in, sir, but I think you'll want to hear this. Your son has more than 3 friends. You really should be ashamed of how you've raised him. A local pharmacy was built on the same street as my school, and local pharmacies get robbed a couple times a year where I live. To make our school more secure, they started locking every door and making it punishable by detention for any instance of a student opening an outside door for someone else during school hours. Everyone had to go through the front doors to the lobby to show ID and sign in before they got into the actual school. I liked how secure the school was, but when our principal was walking superintendents around to show them our new media production and medical sciences wing of the school, they got locked out after stepping outside to look at an outdoor set. That spot was on the complete opposite side of the school from the front office. During class change, they tried knocking on the door to get a student to open it. Everyone ignored them and followed the rules. Those old men and ladies had to walk around the school in 95-degree, 90% humidity weather, sweating their suits off. Our principal did commend all the students for following the rules at the next school assembly and said he was proud to show how safe the school was. Cool dude. We have a similar policy where outside doors are locked and people have to be screened in through the front door. The only issue is, when you come to the front, they just let you in without checking in it or anything. It's just extra walking. My company, as part of its alcohol policy, said you should not drink for at least 4 hours before coming to work. When engineers got called about production problems over the weekend, they all just had a beer but could be there in about 4 or 5 hours. Weekend rule: no matter the time of day, always answer your barracks room door with a beer in your hand. No running during recess. It was made because some kid in the 2nd grade ran and tripped, so for whatever reason, they restricted running for all grades K-5. Everyone should know that when you ask a 5-10-year-old to not do something, that's the next thing they're going to do. They started running in the halls, the cafeteria, the classrooms, and you bet your butt they ran outside. After a week, the teachers stopped enforcing it and everyone stopped caring. An insane amount of time and hand-wringing went into my office's dress code policy. When the final draft was ultimately released, every department head had a valid reason why their staff should be exempted, so the policy wound up only affecting myself and the guy that insisted on making the policy. I violate this policy on a daily basis. When I was in kindergarten, during the morning announcements one day they came on and said, "And please no throwing snowballs. There is a chance you might accidentally get some rocks in them." You could see on the faces of all 20-some students the realization that OMG, we could put rocks in them. LOL. Children are such buttholes. I went to a private school for elementary, where uniforms were strict. If you didn't wear a belt, you'd go to the principal's office and he would make you use a shoestring. Well, when he opened the drawer there was like 6 different colors and everybody thought it was really neat, so for a short period of time there was a bunch of kids coming to school with no belt so they could wear their lime green shoestring belt. TF2 eye roll. My high school has a policy where you couldn't wear hats at school unless the school's mascot logo was on it. So a bunch of people just bought a patch of the logo and paperclipped them to their hats. My dad was a corpsman with the Marines doing high desert training in the Mojave. They had a big problem with unidentified snake bites, i.e. people would get bit but not identify the snake. So it was hard to find the right antidote. So my dad got all the Marines in a room and said, if you get bit by a snake, bring it back here so we can identify it. Not even a full week later they had to alter the wording a bit, because a Marine was bit by a rattlesnake and decided to bring it back without killing it. This man had carried this snake all the way back to base alive, and the snake decided to let him know exactly how he felt about that by repeatedly biting his arm the entire time. Needless to say, that Marine went home, and they made sure to hold another meeting where they told everyone to kill the snake, then bring it back. I told this story before, but in high school they banned backpacks in classrooms. Everyone was pee. Some girls started bringing bigger purses to put their books in. So a bunch of dudes brought their mom's purses in and were using those for school books. Administration and teachers got upset because we found a loophole, so they banned purses too. At which point a bunch of moms got upset because their daughters had to carry around tampons and stuff in their coat pockets, in addition to all of their books, notebooks, calculators, pens, pencils, and whatever else they have in those purses. Finally the school let everyone have their backpacks back. They made a new rule where we had to ask permission to use the restroom during lunch. We all coordinated and the whole cafeteria would raise their hands at once to request to go. They responded by sending us 2 at a time. We did this for a few days, then changed our procedure to everyone just getting up at once and going to the restroom without permission. They didn't ever officially do away with the rule, but the teachers on duty in the lunchroom eventually just stopped enforcing it. Zero tolerance, which means if you are involved with fighting, you will be kicked out. No questions asked. They think it would means no more fighting. Nope. It means if the bully is beating up a kid, no one would step in, for fear of involving with the fight and getting kicked out. No one would snitch because it means the bully will target you next, and now you are involved in fighting and get kicked out. It is a crap policy. My high school attempted to ban trip pants and the like. However, due to a hilariously overlooked typo, the student handbook that got sent to students and parents just said students may not wear pants. We had a good laugh and it made the local news. Unfortunately, this does show the quality of high school I went to. Wasn't ready for college, haha. Students may not wear pants. Shows up in a kimono. Or, interpret it the British way and go to school commando. Though that's usually unnoticeable. I like seeing how a good amount of people assume it's a guy wearing said kimono. My high school had a really bad problem with students showing up to class 5 minutes late every day. So they tried 3 different solutions. First, they stopped letting us use lockers. They quickly found out that just meant that nobody brought their books to class. Next, they decided to ban use of the restrooms between class periods. Teachers started complaining about everyone asking for a bathroom pass as soon as class started, so that was abandoned after a week or so. Lastly, one week they made a ton of announcements Monday, Wednesday that all students were to be on time for class. Then on Thursday they suspended any student who was late for insubordination. Turns out that included half the football team. This occurred right before the biggest game of the year. In a town of 4,000 people, this game attracts 16,000. So yeah, they gave that up as well. People of Reddit, what is the most absurd rule your parents had growing up? No glassware, even though we had a bunch. My dad told me we'd drop it, it would break. We wouldn't clean it up. He'd cut his foot and die, and it would be our fault. As an adult, I came back and took all the glasses after I asked him if he was scared about cutting his foot still. Problem solved. My parents were 2 different flavors of crazy, so there's more. One of my chores was recycling. Once a week I'd have to sit down with all the recycling bins and separate all the plastic from the cardboard, and cut it all down so it would all fit equally. This took a few hours. One day, I watched the trash truck come by, pick up my neatly organized trash, and toss it in carelessly. I confronted my father about it and he told me it's what he wanted. This would be a point of contention until they finally switched to a big rolling bin you couldn't organize. My dad has OCD and control issues. LOL, we had the same rule. Only allowed soda or water bottles with a screw-on cap, and it could never leave the dining room table. No drink in my room ever. Not my parents, but my grandparents. If they'd see you sitting and relaxing, they'd point out chores that you have to do instead. Eventually we'd just catch it when they were about to come inside the house and start cleaning just to look busy. Strict parents make the best liars. My parents are from Alabama. I'm not. My dad was in the Navy, so I grew up all over. As such, they are rabid University of Alabama football fans. When I was a kid and there was a televised game in our area, I was required to be in front of the TV, festooned in Alabama gear to cheer for the team. If I refused, I got grounded. I wish I was making that up. I couldn't have any friends over. My mom was scared they would steal random stuff. 10 years later and she still says my friends stole her pillowcases. They were some dandy but pillowcases though. You can't have a phone, even a flip phone, but we want to know where you are at all times, and it's your fault if you can't find a phone to let us know where you are every hour. I think you're me. Wasn't allowed to leave a friend's house once I was there, like even going next door to another friend's backyard. If I didn't call on the hour they'd call and demand to talk to me. A few times my friend's parents would say they weren't sure where we were, even if we were in his room or in the driveway. My parents would race over and take me home immediately. No hanging anything on my walls. No posters, pictures, absolutely not allowed. I tried to compromise and put a poster on the side of my bookshelf and it didn't last one day until she threw it in the trash while I was at school. Oh, also no friends can come over, ever. Birthday parties are family only, and I couldn't go to their houses either. So I had my first sleepover with friends after I moved out. That is so sad. My son is in basketball with a kid who doesn't get to go to parties and has never been to a sleepover. We tried to invite him to my son's last party and his parents just ignored the invitation. They're in 6th grade. Over the summer, my high school gave the option of reading 2 books and writing 2 5-page reports on them. If you completed and passed, you would automatically get an A on the English midterm. Every summer my parents would ground me and my sister until the reports were finished. The only things we were allowed to do is go to our sporting events and finish the reports. My parents weren't all that strict, but this just seemed weird. I personally would have rather taken the 2-hour midterm instead. In our house, candles needed to be lit at least one time. This was my grandmother's rule and she claimed it was tacky and tasteless to have a candle with an unburned wick. I grew up and went to college believing this insanity. I would quietly judge others if I saw an unburned wick on a decorative candle. I'm better now. Upvoted because I chuckled at the mental image of you glaring at candles in people's homes. No electronic devices or playing anything or reading any comics or novels during whole of the school year. I'm Asian before you ask. Don't use the good guest towels which were always hung in the bathroom. You had to go to the linen closet to grab an everyday towel. We never had guests over anyway. So basically don't use the decoration towels. My parents had a few, but my least favorite was our curfew rules. We had to be home by 9 o'clock on weekdays, if we were allowed to leave, and 10 o'clock on weekends. We lived over half an hour from town and for every minute that we were late we got grounded for 1 week. No excuses or explanations allowed. Also, to be considered home meant being inside with the door locked and all outside lights turned off. Get home on time but stay outside with the dog for a minute before coming in. Grounded for a week. Hit a couple of unexpected red lights and get inside at 10:04. Grounded for a month. I would leave and not come back. Parents like that are horrible. Oh geez. Let's see. No laughing and no talking loudly. Can't be in the bathroom or shower for more than 10 minutes. Had to set timer each time. They'd barge in and check after time was up. My mom was very much against masturbation. Posted this in Ray to another thread here. No knives at the dinner table till I was 15 or so. We were given a weekly allowance of $5 and had to buy all of our own toiletries with it. TP, toothpaste, shampoo, etc. Couldn't use theirs or our siblings if we ran out. Kind of a good teaching method but weird too. No soda, ever. Don't drink milk, only use it on cereal. Could only watch G-rated movies until I was 16. We had to clean a lot. My mother was very OCD. We had to clean 2 full rooms each top to bottom down on hands and knees scrubbing type clean each and every day plus other choirs. Had a chart with rotating assignments. If we didn't get enough stars, we didn't get our allowance. See above. Do not accept gifts from anyone ever. Wasn't allowed to read Harry Potter because the witchcraft. Mum's rule. Funny because my dad read the first one to us as kids when it was bath time. I'm sure I'm forgetting others, but those are the first that come to mind. Christ, your parents ran the house like a religious preschool. Most of the time, the rule was just don't be disrespectful, but that was just an excuse for my dad to beat us for anything, everything, and nothing. It was just super vague, so we never know we were going to break it until we did, and once we did, we generally didn't know what exactly the thing we did wrong was. So he breaks his own rules. My parents would get mad at us for treating the house as a crash pad. We all had job, school, bands, extracurricular. They'd bee us out. We'd stay home all day, hanging on the couch or in our rooms, then they'd walk in the room and be about us lazing around the house too much. I think they just didn't want kids. Wasn't allowed to sit on the couch at my dad and stepmom's house. My sister and I had to sit on the floor with pillows. We would have movie night and my dad would be in his recliner. Stepmom would be on the couch with the dog, and we would be on the floor. It would almost make sense if the dog hadn't been allowed on the couch instead of us. ETA. There was also a bathroom we weren't allowed to poop in, and like someone else said, we weren't allowed to use glasses for drinks. We each had a water bottle jug that we would refill and keep in the fridge. Me too. When I was like 4, my grandparents bought a brand new white couch and I could never sit in it. Eventually I moved in with them permanently, and when I was 15 I finally could sit on it. It was like a decade old at that point. We were absolutely not allowed to eat at McDonald's. My dad's rule. So every month or so, my mom would pick me up from school early on a Friday and we'd go to McDonald's. Honestly, one of my favorite childhood memories. Then when I moved out for university I gorged myself on McDonald's. Forbidding things is not a good parenting tactic, just makes it all the more appealing. Which has me questioning my ban on TikTok for my 2 kids. Nah. As a teacher, please continue to ban TikTok. Lots of mature content on there with absolutely no way of monitoring what they see. We were only allowed to use the computer for 30 minutes a day even for homework, but could play as many video games on the PlayStation and watch as much TV as we wanted. I don't understand to this day. If I was caught singing along to a song and knew all the words, I'd be punished by reading prayers because I had to know all those by heart, too. I mean, sorry, that Britney Spears had better songwriters, I guess. Oops, you did it again. My best friend in high school was not allowed to come home after midnight, which meant if it was 11:45 PM and we were 20 minutes away from her house, she would have to scramble to find somewhere to stay for the night. That or make absolute sure she was home before midnight, which is no fun when you're 18 years old. I think it was something about either not wanting to be woken up by her coming in or worrying that they would think someone was breaking in. I honestly don't remember. All I remember is her sleeping on my floor a lot. This reminds me of a young girl who was murdered in my country by a sexual predator, Paul Bernardo. She had gotten home after curfew, so her mother locked her out, and she was murdered that night. Mum wouldn't let me read Harry Potter because it had magic. She also wouldn't let me watch the How to Train a Dragon movie series because apparently dragons were associated with the devil. She was a devout Catholic, yet she had no problem with me reading The Hobbit, or The Lord of the Rings, or watching Dragon Tales. Faithful Catholic here. My dad is even a deacon. My whole family are Harry Potter junkies. I have an HP tattoo. Nothing annoys me more than Catholics take issue with HP. It's not a gateway to the devil. Sigh. No phone allowed in bathroom, so I couldn't wank. Maximum 10 minutes in the bathroom, then they will the door constantly. So started watching P on our TV and wank completely naked on sofa. Now I live alone. I wasn't allowed to have short hair. Female. I'm talking about shorter than shoulder blade length. My dad doesn't care. My mom vehemently hates seeing me with short hair, to the point of screaming matches about it. This is the only thing she has an issue with. She's very set to the idea that, since she as youth didn't get to do and try cool things with her body, I should be able to. She's all for things like dyeing hair and tasteful tattoos. I spent a year during high school convincing her into letting me get it cut to at least a bob. One day while out with her I idly wondered aloud if our super fun favorite hairdresser at a cost cutters was working. She snapped and shouted that if I wanted it so bad we were driving over and doing it now or I could never mention it again. I agreed and she angrily drove me over and glared from her seat as my mid-back hair was cut to a long pixie. Donated it too. When we returned home, she locked herself in her bedroom and refused to come out or talk to anyone for 2 days. Kicked my sister out of the house when she visited and ignored dad's calls while he was in Canada. I loved the cut so much that I kept my hair that short for 6 years before I got bored and grew it out again. To this day when I ask why she doesn't like my hair short she gets incredibly mad and refuses to talk about it. That's so dumb. My dad made it clear that he didn't like me to have short hair and would comment on it, but he never outright forbid it. Too bad he can't see me now. I decided to get the best of both worlds and have gotten half of my head buzzed for 4 years now, longest I've ever kept the same cut. I had to read a book a week not assigned at school. If they didn't like it, they chose one for me. I have never been more grateful for such an absurd rule. My mother made me read with her for an hour every night before bed. No exceptions. I agree, it was a good rule. No Dragon Ball Z. Or any anime for that matter, because those cartoons are made to recruit kids into Satanism. My friend Carol sent me a Hotmail chain about it. None of that One Piece crap. The fruit is possessed by a devil. While we're at it, fruit is banned too. It'll get you haunted. My mom forbid me from wearing clothes with cherries on them. When I asked her why she just said you know what it means. Number. No we don't. Friend of mine told me his parents spanked him and his siblings until each one lived in his or her own place. Still had other forms of punishment, but if they felt it was necessary, it didn't matter if the child was old enough to vote. Dad would whip out the belt. From what I heard they're still close. My mom stopped spanking me when I was 11 and I started laughing while she was spanking me. No TV other than early evening Saturdays and Sundays. The idea was that we should do homework or revision or read. I still read all the time and never watch TV. For over 50 years now. I had the opposite result. I now watch TV all the time. My TV is on if I'm home. All day long until I fall asleep. My parents restricted TV to only on Friday night, Saturday night, and occasionally on a Sunday night if we didn't have school the next day. I wasn't allowed to paint my fingernails anything other clear or clear with sparkles until I was like 15. Absolutely no idea why, but even to this day I hate having my nails painted. Me too. I remember stealing my mum's nail polish once in a while and any color I applied she said was too loud TF that means. Now I'm not really a fan of nail art and I know it's cause of her so I'm kind of pee about that. They made me play outside like a real kid every day during the summer. I legit wasn't allowed inside unless it was pouring down rain or 100 degrees. That would be a rule that sounds good on paper but in reality makes no fucking sense. Age 10 wouldn't give me money to buy Pokemon cards. Age 15 would give me money for cigarettes. Didn't end up getting into Pokemon but I'm still a smoker. I hope you break that habit, it will destroy your life eventually. Me and my older brother were categorically not allowed to eat McDonald's food when we were younger because our parents hated it. We missed out on countless birthday parties etc. My parents even hooked me from going on a rugby tour when I was 10 because there was a McDonald's near the campsite. Needless to say there was only one place we were going when my brother got his driver's license. We missed out on countless birthday parties etc. My parents even hooked me from going on a rugby tour when I was 10 because there was a McDonald's near the campsite. It's worth preventing my child from having a social life as long as my child doesn't eat McDonald's. I know of a family that still don't allow their adult children to have a Facebook or Instagram account. They'd always been a bit suspicious of social media anyway, but even when the kids turned 18 the parents didn't let up on their rule. No, not even allow their kid to have an account and they'd friend them, like a lot of people my age on Facebook do. One of them has a secret Facebook account under an alias as a result, so I guess that rule has failed. Oddly enough, that same family has no objection to other services such as PlayStation Network and YouTube, which I guess is social media in a way, as their kids have accounts on there, but for some reason they have a problem with Facebook and Instagram. It just baffles me in all honesty. That's weirdly debilitating in the modern world. People don't trust you online without a social media to verify that you are who you say you are, and employers will sometimes literally pass you over if they can't find anything. My family was completely anti-electronics until we got to high school. Then we got to Firefly, which was capable of calling for numbers, home, parents' cells, and emergency number. It changed when iPhones came out and schools began incorporating those into their classes. My dad had a rule of no talking at the table. It led to me learning how to eat quickly and just get away from the table. Today I enjoy eating with friends and my family because we talk, laugh, and enjoy ourselves and become closer. I grew up as a Jehovah's Witness JW, so I have plenty. No Christmas, no Easter. Those two at least make sense as they're religious celebrations. No birthdays, not even allowed to say happy birthday to people. Go to others' kids' birthday parties, eat birthday cake. I didn't celebrate a birthday through my entire childhood. No after school activities or weekend sports. No friends unless they were JWs as well. So 2 other kids in my school. No TV or movies that had magic or demons or stuff like that. Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, etc. Had to attend church, they call them meetings, 3 times a week and go outdoor knocking, witnessing, at least once a week, plus heaps of other BS. And if I wanted to leave also had to say goodbye to my family and friends. If anyone leaves all the remaining JWs will shun them. The JWs are a terrible cult. Whoa. I wasn't allowed to watch Happy Days. This is back when it was on its original run in the 70s because my mom thought Fonzie snapping his fingers and all the girls immediately running to his side to coo over him was sexist and demeaning to women. And, I mean, she's not wrong. But it was a weird hill to die on, especially since I was a voracious reader and she didn't limit what I was allowed to read at all. So picture me not being allowed to watch Fonzie, but I could read all the graphic sex that Sidney Sheldon and Judith Krantz could dream up to my heart's content. My parents checked what I watched ferociously but not what I read, lol. My parents were honestly pretty chill. They would have reasonable punishments and money as a reward. But I do know that my cousins would get slapped if they had gum. I was on a Zoom call with them and one of them was chewing gum. And my aunt just slapped her right then and there and said, "Where did you get that unpermitted gum?" I just sat there looking at them in complete silence. 1. You can only marry someone which is from our home country and has the same religion. 2. No sex before marriage. 3. No partying drinking ever. 4. You are a girl, you have to be at home at latest at 4 PM. 5. You're not allowed to hug boys of male friends. 6. You have to be a good housewife and have to be able to cook and aren't allowed to speak against her man and cook and clean for him. RNM 15 and are in the closet open-minded atheist. Gosh, they would hate me if I would tell them. And for anyone before they even ask, no, I can't ever tell them. 50/50 on Asian or Pakistani Muslim. GL. Hope you're laying plans. You know the drill. Never get on an international flight with them. Scout alternate funding for colleges. Because they don't sound too up female education. Be willing to make a break for it. Wasn't allowed to lock my door until I left for college. My parents were absolute control freaks. And I still harbor deep resentment to this day. My parents took my sister's door one time. I was really little so I don't know why, but that crap's fricked up. No boys were allowed on my bed, except they bought me a couch to have in my room so they could have an appropriate place to sit. The poor couch was fricked on so many times it broke. It's not really a rule, but my mom was always against graphic novels and wouldn't really let me read them that much or buy them at school book fairs because she thought they weren't hard enough and enriching enough or something. I'm really good at reading and stuff, so it wasn't really an issue to read a graphic novel once in a while. Big chocolate bars and large soda bottles were banned in my house by my mom. We were only allowed to get smaller packs of junk food so that it could not be had any time of the day and we wouldn't be tempted. It did help limiting how much junk food I ate. Crap, I remember 3-liter soda bottles. Those were the good old fat days. When I was in kindergarten, I wasn't allowed to say the phrase "oh man." When my parents came to school, they would tell anyone who said that phrase not to. Still not entirely clear on why. Oh man, that sucks. I couldn't watch or read any piece of media where the main characters were high schoolers. To my parents, all high schoolers do is smoke, drink, party, and frick. So this meant no Victorious, iCarly, Drake and Josh, etc. They had to look up any book I wanted to read, and if the main characters were in high school, I'd automatically be banned from reading it. This rule eventually dropped when I got to high school. No video games ever. I was only allowed to play games when I turned 13, and only for 1 hour per week, and only on a weekend. Now I'm 18. I play games 6-7 hours a day. I've made about 4 independent games and have helped design, code, and developed about 14 games in total. I wasn't allowed to play outside past the driveway unless there was a parental figure or guardian watching me, nor could I visit friends' houses or hang out with friends after school. And my family wonders why I grew up to have zero social skills and a non-existent social life. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.